Like many 18-year-olds, when I went off to college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Aimless, directionless, no plan, but college is it's just what you did. That's just the thing that was the next thing to do, so check. And when I first got there, my major was public relations. Not a clue why. Don't have a clue why I picked that. It was just one that I was like, that sounds like something I might want to do. It's people-oriented. Took one class, went, that ain't it. I'm not doing that. So then I was like, well, I really like making stupid videos, so I'll go to film. I'll go the film direction. And took about a year and a half of film classes, really enjoyed it, and went, that's not where I'm going. I don't want to live in that kind of place. This is just a hobby. And so looking at all the courses that I had done, I had a lot of credits in the communication department. And so I was like, I'll just major in what I dub, and Eric gets mad at me for saying it, but major in pre-unemployment communication studies. It's just the most generic thing. I had a lot of credits there. So I was like, all right, well, I'll just do that. And one of my good friends, when we were talking about this, he was like, man, what do you even do with a communication studies degree? I was like, something. And he was like, well, shouldn't you kind of know and like figure that out? And I was like, well, yeah. And then I said something that makes me gag now. And I said, but man, right now I'm just focusing on my character, not my career. It's gross, isn't it? But what I had done is I had separated out this work world versus worship world, right? Like they're two totally separate things. And I saw work as a necessary burden that I had to do in order to not die. But that's not the way God talks about work at all in his scriptures. The reality of work and worship is that they are intimately entwined. It's an endlessly tangled knot. You can't figure out where one begins and one ends, and you don't give up. You embrace the fact that they are tangled. And the idea of working on your character separate from work is foreign to the scriptures because work reveals your character. How you work says a lot about who you are, and will show you to either be wise or foolish. Because work is worship, and you're always worshiping one of two things in your work: God or yourself. But the question before us is, how do we worship God in our work? And Proverbs helps us out a lot, but before we get there, I wanna back up just a little bit. And I want you to see that you were made to work. So the book of Proverbs assumes that work is the normal path of life. It's the normal day-to-day activity of life. There are roughly 30 that are absolutely 100% directly related to work, but so many of them color work in, that they color in the lines of work. The idea of fairness and right dealing, how we use our words, how we manage our money, dealing with difficult, foolish people. Work is woven throughout Proverbs because work is the normal exercise of life. And it's not an accident that it is that way. It's by design. And so to see that, we're going to go all the way back to Genesis. Now, don't worry, they're all going to pop up on the screen. So if you're frantically flipping around going, where is he at? They're on the screen. But what we see right in Genesis is that God is the first and ultimate worker. In Genesis 1, we see that he created everything that exists: light and dark, mountains and valleys, oceans and plains, giraffes and mice. And then he made it, and it was good. And he included everything in that creation, including work. He worked to create all things. And we follow God in his work. Genesis 2. God makes the first man, Adam, and he puts him to work. Genesis 2:15. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. Adam was made to work. Enjoy God's creation by joining God in his work. Take what God made, cultivate it, care for it, and realize its potential. And this was before the fall, so it's good. Work is good. Except there was one thing that was not good: Adam's alone. And so he makes Eve the perfect companion for Adam and gives her to help Adam in his work. He says in Genesis 1:28, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion. And so he says, hey, cultivate this garden, grow out, grab what's there, pull it up and make new things with it. And as you multiply, your multiplication is to go out and do likewise all throughout the world until God's glory covers the earth. And so you and I were literally made to work, joining God in his work. But work can be hard, and messy, and painful, and irritating, and even miserable because work is cursed. Genesis 3, Adam and Eve do the one thing that God forbids and reject his authority, and sin enters into the world and twists and distorts everything, including work. And God curses Adam's work. Look, Genesis 3, 17 and 19. God says, cursed is the ground because of you. And in pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. And you shall have to eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground. And so work is hard, it fights back. When we work, the thorns and thistles of the hard ground of a sin-stained world tear up our hands. And we sweat and we grind to get the bread that we need. And it's distorted. It's either an enemy that we fight against or it becomes a God that we bow down to at the expense of others' good. But though, I want to be clear, though work is cursed, work is not a curse. Work keeps its original purpose, to glorify God. You and I keep our original purpose, to glorify God. And to this day, our work showcases God's purpose in the world to glorify himself. And though our work is cursed by sin, it's not a curse. It is our purpose. And so the first thing to just consider is, how do you view work? Do you see it as your purpose? Or do you see it as a curse? Is it your God that you bow down to no matter what? Is it your enemy? Is it a necessary burden to live? Well, we were made to work, to be purposefully productive, serving God and others. But then, how are we to work? And this is where Proverbs becomes extremely helpful. Hard. You were made to work hard. And part of that reason is because the ground is hard. So work is just naturally hard. So to fight against the hard ground, you've got to work hard. But it's because you are to worship God hard. You are to worship him and love him with all your heart, soul, and mind. And so work, being a part of your worship, is you give your full effort, mind, energy, body over to that task. So what Proverbs does all throughout is it praises hard work and belittles laziness. The way of wisdom is the way of hard work. The way of folly is the way of laziness. And so we have a contrast between two people, the wise worker and the stupid sluggard. And what we see from the stupid sluggard is that laziness is beyond foolishness. Proverbs 26, 12 through 16. Verse 12 says, do you see a man who is wise in his own eyes? There's more hope for a fool than for him. So there's someone more foolish than a fool. The one who's wise in their own eyes. They don't do anything wrong. They've got it all figured out. Everyone else is a moron. And the writer of Proverbs gives this person a name, the sluggard. Yeah, he comically but ruthlessly mocks him. Like, this is a roast of roasts. Verse 13, the sluggard says, there's a lion in the road. There's a lion in the streets. What? Okay, here's what's going on. The sluggard won't leave his house because he's making up danger outside. The lion is not a real lion. It's a fake, it's a figment of his imagination. It's an irrational fear to justify his laziness. He's an excuse maker and he rationalizes laziness. Ultimately, he's a coward. He's afraid of hard work. And I want to say, do not let fear keep you from fulfilling your purpose to work hard for God's glory. So the sluggard won't leave the house because he's an excuse-making coward, but he also won't leave his bed. Verse 14, as a door turns on its hinges, so does a sluggard on his bed. So he won't leave his bed. And the imagery, I'll be honest with you, I think a lot of things are funny and I get in trouble for it because I laugh at the wrong times, like last week. But the imagery is this person lying on their back, and like the phone rings or the kid's yelling or it's like whatever, the alarm goes off, and then they just like just creak over like a door on its hinges to get to whatever they're doing. A lot of effort going on. There's no intensity, there's no urgency, there's no drive. But a door is supposed to be fastened to its hinges and serve its purpose. It opens. The sluggard is fastened to his comfort zone and serves no purpose. But Solomon continues, just punching the sluggard. Verse 15, the sluggard buries his hand in the dish, and it wears him out to bring it back to his mouth. He won't even feed himself. He can't even take care of himself at all. And this wears him out, describes a mental and spiritual fatigue. The effort required to feed himself feels so overwhelming that he can't even do it. Just the idea of work, he's allergic to it. And he progressively makes no progress. His laziness just nosedives into more laziness. But that's not the worst part. It's not just that he's not contributing anything and that he can't even take care of himself. No, the worst part is verse 16. The sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. So verse 12, do you see a man who's wise in his own eyes? There's more hope for him there's more hope for a fool than for him. And the sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men. He's woefully prideful. He's a greater fool than a fool. And so laziness is ultimately an expression of foolish, self-worshipful pride. And God opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. And so you might have known this person. You may be this person, I don't know. You have no work, not you, sorry. This guy over here, no work, no responsibilities, no accomplishments, but they act like they know everything. They critique everything and everyone. Well, if I was doing that, it's like, well, then just go do it. Like, stop complaining about it and just get it done. They truly believe that they're wise, but their slothfulness proves them to be more foolish than a fool. And this is the primary warning in Proverbs regarding work, is that laziness is beyond foolishness. And there's a few reasons for that. One of them is that it makes you a useless destroyer. The sluggard, he won't get out, he won't get up, and he won't get fed. He does nothing and wastes away. He wastes his time, his talent, his gifts, and his skill that God gave him. And so he's useless to himself, to others, and to even God. And if we are made to work, joining God in his work, the sluggard rejects his purpose in life. I got a really embarrassing story that I'm gonna tell you. It's not because I just like to be punched, like, you know what I mean? But it's so you can see the redeeming work of God in a sluggard's life. So early on, freshman year, I got done with class, at least I went to class, and I had like an hour before lunch. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll just there's this DVD series, the sitcom I was into, so I was like, I'll just watch like an episode or two, and then I'll go off to lunch, whatever. That turned into about 8.5 hours of video games and DVDs where I literally just laid in the bed. I didn't eat that day. I was the sluggard. Thank God for his mercy. And here's the thing. I think that there's a way you could have looked at me in that time and be like, oh, he's depressed. He's just overwhelmed with all he's got going on. I'm gonna tell you, I didn't have a lot going on. I had a pretty good life that I enjoyed a lot. I was worshiping, actually. I was worshiping my comfort zone more than anything else. And I worshiped at the altar of my useless desire. See, God has given us all unique abilities, intelligence, skills, giftings that we're to use to maximize his glory in the world through our work. You are not made to be useless. The sluggard is, and he's unfulfilled because he's not fulfilling his purpose. So laziness is beyond foolish because it makes you useless, but laziness destroys. So literally, the sluggard will die because he can't bring the food to his mouth. He's so afraid of hard work, he refuses to do anything, relying on others to take care of him. Proverbs 21:25 says, the desire of the sluggard kills him. for his hands refuse to labor. So this desire is comfort and ease, pleasure, relaxation, rest. The sluggard only takes, never contributes, which ultimately helps to destroy others. Proverbs 18:9, whoever is slack in his work is a brother to him who destroys. So when you don't work hard, you are robbing others, ultimately robbing God of the blessing of your gifts and abilities, and things break down. Proverbs 24:30-31 gives a pretty vivid description of this broken down work ethic and the results of it. Verse 30, Proverbs 24, I passed by the field of a sluggard, by the vineyard of a man lacking sense. Behold, it was all overgrown with thorns. The ground was covered with nettles, and its stone wall was broken down. Laziness destroys. Hard work constructs. So, I know that that's pretty harsh. And what's good is that most of the people who are sitting in this room right now are not this way. Most of you work pretty hard, or some of you really hard. So why such a harsh warning? Well, so we never become like this. Because what we see is that there is a progressive nature of laziness, right? The sluggard won't leave his house, then he won't get out of bed, then he won't even bring his hand to his mouth. There's a progression there. There's a warning there of like, if you let this start to creep into your life, it will take over. It's like anti-exercise. As you flex your laziness muscle, it gets stronger and your work muscle gets weaker. It's a snowball effect. It gets harder and harder to not be lazy. But there's also the truth that just because you're working, as far as like, doing things, that you're not being sluggardy. Because half-hearted, low-energy work robs God of his glory and others' blessing. And I think the primary way I see this in many folks' lives, including my own, is not in, all right, I'm gonna go do it, like a drive kind of thing. It's more just distraction. We have so many distractions. There's a billion ways, and we've talked a lot about them. Social media, shows, movies, entertainment, even things like your kids' sports and gymnastics and extracurriculars and all that kind of stuff. Like that can just distract you from what God desires for you to do in your work. And none of these are wicked. Most of them are good. But they can be distractions from our God-given purpose to work hard. And so when you're working, which is broader than just your career, okay? Like home work, right? Church work, effort, energy, where you're seeking to do work. You're expending spiritual, mental, emotional, physical labor. That's work. So when you're doing that, work. Give yourself over to it. When you're at the office or in class, turn on Do Not Disturb on your phone. Men, when you're headed home, and instead of turning on the radio or the podcast to like just kind of distract yourself and get, your mind from, all right, deal with all that, that I just experienced. Take time to prepare yourself to work hard for when you get home, because it doesn't stop when you clock out of your career. Moms, be all in with your kids. I think that you can be in a dangerous position because I've heard some of you say, like, I just feel lonely and isolated, and it can be easy to be like, I'm just gonna get distracted with this, that, and the other, right? Don't let those distractions creep in and keep you from your primary mission to disciple those kids. And everyone, you can make an account of your day, like beforehand and afterwards. Review it, but before, schedule, make checklists, push yourself, kill the distractions in your life because they hamstring your work. And that's what we're made for. Working hard for the glory of God. But while laziness is beyond foolishness, hard work is wisdom. Proverbs 6:6-8 is where we're gonna land now. And so it seems like we should just know what hard work looks like, right? The opposite of laziness. But God uses an interesting analogy to show what a wise worker looks like. And it's an ant. He says in verse 6 of chapter 6, go to the ant, O sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. You wanna be wise? Be an ant. It's kind of an insult to the sluggard. Like Solomon's kind of mocking him again a little bit. He's saying, hey, you have this intelligence and you don't have the intelligence, diligence, strength of even an ant. This little thing that's like a quarter of an inch long, has the brain the size of like half a grain of sand. That is teaching the one who could obliterate that ant with a little just boop of his finger. But also the ant is a prime example of work. Verse 7, without having any chief, officer, or ruler, so the ant doesn't have to get orders to be forced to work. It doesn't need someone yelling at him and saying, get on with it. It just does the work. You ever mess with an ant? Like when they're going on their little journey or whatever, like you kind of just like put something in front of them. What do? They don't freak out and go, I'm done. No, they figure out a way around whatever it is and they go on with their work. But what's ironic about this is that the sluggard does have a chief, officer, or ruler, God, and yet he's unwilling to do the thing that his rulers told him to do. Verse 8, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. This is hard work. These are probably harvester ants, and they travel up to like 50 meters, even more, to find food. That's like walking 5 miles just to get a little something. They can lift up to 50 times their body weight. So they are working. They are really working hard. Their sleep is like, they sleep like barely 5 hours a day, and it's like in a rotation, so they can just keep it always moving and going and blowing. And they do this so they can provide for the colony. That's what their work is for. And so while it might seem like a silly analogy, there's a lot to teach us there. The purpose of hard work is flourishing for others, okay? Your labor and the fruit of your labor is ultimately for others' benefit, not just your own. It's for the colony. And so men, you are to be the lead worker in your home. The lead worker in your home. God has given you the weight and responsibility to provide for others, primarily your family. And so your provision must have a sacrificial shape where you work to earn to give. And then you work to earn to give. Work to earn to give. And your goal in working is to bless others. And brothers, I'm gonna be honest with you. There are so many of you that do this so well. Like you teach me what it is to work hard for the blessing of others. I was gonna name some people, but I was like, they wouldn't want me to do that anyway, and I'll forget somebody. But there's also so many, we don't have time. But you are examples to us of how to work hard to bless others. But your goal is to use your resources so others may know Jesus. Don't use your provision to protect yourself, right? You're to lead, protect, and provide, but that's for others' protection and provision, not your own. So don't build an isolated castle where you're protected at the expense of others' good. Be an ant. Tirelessly work, giving yourself over to God, others' good for God's glory. So you were made to work. You're made to work hard, and you are also made to work hard for your boss. Isn't that cute? I was going to say Jesus, and I was like, let's be cute with it. Put a capital B there. That's Jesus. You were made to work hard for the glory of God. And the way in which you do that is that you submit your work to the lordship of Jesus Christ. Colossians 3:23-24. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. So Paul, who's writing this letter, is actually talking to servants at this point, bond servants, people that are indebted to someone and who serve them for no money, okay? So not a great situation for them. And here's what he tells them. Whatever you do. This literally means anything. It's all encompassing. There's no area of your life outside of Jesus' dominion, including work. So whatever you do, work heartily with the very breath of life that God put into you. Your heart, your affections, your emotions, intentions, your body, your mind, all of it goes all in to work. So whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. So you don't work for your employer or your family or for a promotion or a raise or compliments or good grades or a well done. Ultimately, you're working for the Lord because ultimately Jesus is your boss. The good news is that he's a really good one. So what we see is that Jesus defines your work. Jesus defines your work. The suffering servant calls you to work like he works. This servant mindset needs to be present when you work, seeking to bless others. Because I know, like, there are days when work feels like something you just have to get through, just to endure. It's a necessary burden just to get by. But sometimes it's because we don't see things the right way. And here's what I want you to know. In Christ, your work, whatever it is, whether it's in the home, in an office, in a garage, whatever, it is redeemed in Christ. He bought it for his glory and others' good. And everything you do is for him. And here's the good news of that. That means that everything you do, every drop of sweat that falls from your face as you work is filled with great purpose, eternal purpose, regardless of the work. So whether you're changing diapers or changing tires, fixing roads or fixing bones, administering shots or administering documents, whatever it is, it has an eternal purpose. You may think that what you do doesn't really matter, but if you do it for the Lord, it has eternal value. And because of that great value, you can give it great effort. And so Jesus defines how you work. Servant. Work isn't about you, it's about Jesus. So how can you work like this? How can you have this servant mindset, this servant heart when you go to work? Well, you remember your inheritance. Verse 24, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. Notice it says you will receive the inheritance. It's not an inheritance. It's not something you earn. It's not something that you worked for. It's something that Jesus earned. It's something that he worked for. It's his inheritance. Every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places is available for you. Or the way that Peter says it in 1 Peter, it's an inheritance that is imperishable, undefiled, and unfading, kept in heaven for you. If you are a Christian, if you are in Christ, if you've trusted Christ to save you, you have the greatest retirement plan in human history. You don't work for the inheritance, you work from the inheritance. You already have everything, so you can serve even when it's extremely difficult. Because when work is about the glory of Jesus, it can be really hard, but it's always really good. You can endure the difficulty. So why is my company making this decision? Why are my kids so difficult? Because they're sinners. My coworkers are driving me crazy. They don't get their work done. Well, when Jesus defines your work, those irritants, difficulties, and frustrations are opportunities to magnify Jesus by serving others. There's always things you don't want to do. There's always things you don't want to do. There's always people you don't want to deal with. And so make your have to your want to. That was something that fell out of my mouth one day when my kids were grumbling about their schoolwork. They're like, we don't want to do this. It's like, hey, just make your have to your want to. And then it just kind of stuck. And now it's something I say every single day. Well, how do you do that? You make it about Jesus. And how do you make it about Jesus? Well, you don't make it about yourself. When work is about you, your income, your fulfillment, your promotion, it's misery. But when it's about Jesus, it's glory. And so there's just some really practical things you can do to make it about Jesus. You spend time with him first thing. Just get up 15 minutes earlier and just spend time praying to him, asking for help. Spend time in his word, learning who he is, how he worked, what he wants for you and from you. Set your mind and heart at the feet of your king right out the gate. Also, a way you can make it about Jesus is you just embrace this idea of work as service. Work and service are the same word in your mind. And so it's a mindset that you as you're going to do whatever work it is, everything I do today is to serve others and serve Christ. So every finance report you create, meeting you lead, wire you install, diaper you change, paper you grade, construction plan you draw up, meal plan you schedule, budget you balance, case you litigate, or tax form you file is an opportunity to serve someone else for the glory of Jesus. And the people that you work alongside can know Jesus better because of how you work serving them. you are serving the Lord Christ, and he's worthy of hearty work. Another way is to make your work about Jesus is to remember his great work and his great commission. And so your workplace, whether it's the office, construction yard, hospital, clinic, garage, or home, is your primary mission field to make disciples. So take and make opportunities to share the gospel with those in your mission field. And I know some of you work in places where that's really hard to do, and it takes a lot of wisdom to figure out because you can get in trouble for it. There's wise people that have gone before you who figured out how to do that. They can help you here in this church. And then I do want to talk to the parents for just a second. We parents need to show and teach our kids what Christ exalting work looks like. So show your kids Christ exalting work. Work hard in front of them. Bring them into your work as much as you can. And then watch how you talk about work when you're around them. If you're at the dinner table and you're just, oh, my boss is an idiot, and blah, 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 and this thing happened and it's so hard, what are you doing? You're discipling them. And you're discipling them to go, I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to work at all. So talk about work in ways that honor Christ. And then teach your kids about Christ exalting work. Don't merely let them see it, let them do it. Give them specific responsibilities, even ownership over certain areas of your home, and make them contribute to family life, not just watch it happen from the sideline. They need to be producers in your home, not just consumers, okay? And give them easy things to do for sure, like things that you know, that's a win, they can do that. But give them what I'm gonna call confidence builders. Really hard things that they're going to struggle through, and don't bail them out. You go figure it out. You can do that. They will be better off for it, absolutely. And remember, your goal is not necessarily so that they'll work really, really hard so that you can have a nice retirement home to live in, you know? It's so that they can be gritty, Christ-honoring servants. But we all have times when we're lazy, frustrated, even bitter about work. And Jesus must define it. But here's the thing. There's times when we just fail, just flat out. I want you to know also that Jesus perfects your work. He came to do the Father's work. And what is that work? Rescuing you from your sin. We just sung earlier about every tribe, nation, and tongue bowing down before King Jesus. If you're in Christ, you're part of that tribe, tongue, and nation choir that's singing praise to Jesus. Jesus came to redeem all of creation for God's glory, rescuing lazy, selfish sluggards who are distracted from their destruction and bringing them from sin's kingdom of darkness into his kingdom of light. And at the cross, there's forgiveness for you. Maybe you are like me and maybe you are the sluggard. There's forgiveness for you. Maybe you're the opposite. Maybe you like work as your God and that's all you ever do. And people are actually suffering because of your work. There's forgiveness for you too. And through the Spirit, whom God freely gives to all who trust Christ, there's power to be a gritty, focused, all-in, Christ-exalting worker. And he works for you so that you can work for him. And I do want to tell you, that defines so many of you here. I talked to one of them, one of these people beforehand, because I just wanted to encourage them. But there are folks that are retired here and you would not know that because they're working. They literally have jobs out in the market, but they serve this church like crazy. They're always working and they are literally examples to all of us of how you should live as a worker. There are women here who disciple and raise their children with great intention and intensity, and they are examples. There are so many people that wake up and they see their work as part of Christ's great commission to them, and they do that. They are here. You are here, and we are thankful. So my encouragement to you is don't let up. Thankfully, God grabbed that little sluggard that I mentioned in the introduction, by the scruff, rebuked his sluggardly ways, and put me to good hard work. I love what I get to do. It's real hard. It's really hard, but it's really good, and I can't believe I get to do it. And I hope that you see your work the same way. And you can when you make it about Jesus. Church, there's a lot of work to be done, and that's really good. There are roads to fix, bones to mend, songs to be written, medicines to be discovered, floors to mop, emails to send, engine problems to diagnose, and lectures to teach for the glory of God and the good of others. Whatever your work is, make it about Jesus, his glory and others' good. Let's get to work.